Hello everybody and welcome back to the seedy underbelly of the Final Fantasy VII community, Sector 6. Now in this one, we're what? 5 days away from Intergrade and Intermission dropping. So what I want to do today is I just kind of want to make a few predictions really based around Intermission. Now sadly it's not looking very likely that I'm going to have a PS5 before the 10th, so I'm not going to be able to cover the game directly. What I am going to be doing is I'm going to be moving into Schrodinger's Baby Seal's stream because I'm pretty sure he's going to be streaming Intermission when it drops. So yeah, I'm going to be living there and kind of soaking up all the story that way, which it's not ideal, but it means I'll at the very least be able to continue making content. So don't forget to drop a like on the video and subscribe so that you can see that future content. It definitely helps the channel grow. And recently, a lot of you have been clicking that subscribe button and hitting like on the videos, so I really do appreciate that. I hit 250 subscribers the other day, which is a bit of a landmark, quarter of the way to the big 1,000, so thank you very much for getting me started on this journey, and let's keep going with it. But, let's get on with this. So, here are 7 predictions for Final Fantasy VII Remake Intermission. Now, the DLC looks like it's going to be split into, well, we were told that it was around the length of 2 chapters, roughly, in in Final Fantasy VII Remake. Well, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be split up into 2 chapters. It seems like it's going to be split up into a lot more chapters, smaller little pieces. But I do think the story is going to be split into 2 main parts from everything that we've seen so far. Now, the first part of this seems like it's going to be set pretty much entirely around Sector 7 and the slums. It's going to be very side quest heavy. It's going to be very much about setting up for the mission that Yuffie and Sonon are going to go on into the Shinra headquarters and eventually Deep Ground. So yeah, I do think that the first half, maybe not half, maybe a third, but potentially half of this is going to be all in Sector 7, all in the slums, and I think it's probably going to wrap up with that fight against, is it the Gigantopede? The big robot centipede thing that we've seen Yuffie fight a few times. I think that's going to be where the first half of this kind of wraps up, and from that point on, you're going to be going into the Shinra building. Now, the next one is, I don't even know why I'm saying this. It's a gut feeling more than anything. I just don't think that this summon materia that we're going to get from the Fort Condor minigame is going to be Phoenix. I just don't think it is. It's too early for the Phoenix materia. It's too powerful unless they've scaled it back massively. Now that does lead to speculation as to what that materia could be if it isn't Phoenix. And thematically, it would make sense for it to be Phoenix. I'm not disputing that in the slightest. It makes sense that it would be Phoenix. But I've just got a gut feeling that it's not going to be. I just feel like it's too early for Phoenix unless, yeah, like I say, Phoenix gets scaled back massively. Now, it could potentially be the Ramu materia, but again, I don't know about that. And if we're being honest, little bonus prediction here, it kind of looks like we might get that from the fight with Scarlet. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I could be wrong on that one. It could be that the Ramu materia turns out to be the ultimate materia. I find that very unlikely, but it is a possibility. And the third prediction, it's not even really an intermission prediction, this one. This one's going to be a general prediction for Final Fantasy VII Remake. And that prediction is that there's going to be changes to how Phoenix works as a summon due to the differences in gameplay. So like in the original game, you could set up Phoenix with final attack materia, and if you were to die, you'd cast Phoenix as your final attack. And what that'd do is revive everybody. It was brilliant. I don't think it's going to work like that, purely just because of how summons work, how summons trigger in Remake. You wouldn't be able to pair Phoenix with a final attack materia, because what if you've not got the capability to use the summon in combat? What if the bar isn't filled up? What then? So yeah, I think there are going to be changes to how Phoenix works. So what I think is, rather than it being a summon that revives dead team members, what I think it's going to be is, I think it's going to be some sort of way to cast auto life. So it ends up like a support summon. Maybe there will be a move where you can use that move and it'll revive everybody, or it'll revive one character or something like that. But I think on the whole, we're going to see Phoenix shift from being a straight up revive more likely to an auto life cast. That's my prediction, at least. And do you like how I've covered the bases there? So if Phoenix isn't in the game, number 2's right, and if Phoenix is in the game, maybe number 3's right. See, I'm thinking. Now, the next one is the ultimate materia. Now, like I've already said, it could potentially be Ramu. Don't think it will be, but it could potentially be Ramu. What I personally think it is a huge materia, that Shinra are trying to create a huge materia. I also don't think it's going to be complete. I think it could be a case of bad intel as far as Yuffie and Wutai and all of like Avalanche. I think they might have got the wrong end of the stick. You know, they've heard that Shinra are working on something, they've gone to get it, but it's not ready. So the mission's pointless, and now we're going to suffer all these losses because, like, bonus prediction, Sonon's going to die. I don't think anybody doubts that right now. So yeah, there's one that I should definitely get right. But I think it'd add an interesting depth to the story if it turns out that the mission that they've gone on was a pointless mission in the first place, and it's just going to be cost upon cost upon cost for no reward. That's kind of how I'm feeling about it, because it does seem like it's got quite a dark theme, especially in like the trailers where we see what seems to be later sections of the DLC. It seems very dark. It seems like things have gone poorly. Yuffie does not look happy. Like, I do not know how we're going to go from the Yuffie that we seem to be seeing at the end of Intermission to the Yuffie that's happy-go-lucky and cheery and jumping around and stealing your material. I just don't see that happening now. Now, going back to the first prediction a little bit, I think this second part of the DLC is going to be set pretty much exclusively in Shinra headquarters and Deep Ground. So once you get past that Gigantipede, that's when you're then going to go on into the Shinra building. You're going to face off against Scarlet, and then after you've faced off against Scarlet, you're then going to end up into Deep Ground. It's pretty much borne out as well by the track listing on the Final Fantasy VII Remake Intermission original soundtrack that's been released. A lot of the titles match up with this kind of flow where everything seems to be going on in Sector 7, everything seems to be in the slums and setting everything up, and then we move on and we get like the actual mission, you know, the proper guts of the story. This is where things are going to happen. And also, for another little corroborating thing on this, when you look at the trailers, you see the HP levels in the Sector 7 areas and things like that are a lot lower than the HP levels when you get to Scarlet, which are also lower than the HP levels when you get to Nero. So it shows that that is the flow that the story is probably going to take. Now, that doesn't mean that there's not going to be anything else going on in between. They could have kept something from us completely, and I'm pretty certain they have. When you look at the track listings for Final Fantasy VII Intermission's original soundtrack, there are massive sections of that soundtrack where there's just no title. There's just no title whatsoever. And some of the titled ones are getting us thinking, but I think everybody thinks this and everybody knows this, but the interesting things are going to be in those hidden titles. That's where things are going to go down. Now, the next one is that I kind of feel like there's going to be a time skip of some sort during this DLC. Now, if you watch the trailers, you can see that when Yuffie and Sonon get into what looks like Deep Ground, it could either be Deep Ground or it could be the area where they're fighting Scarlet. It's the very first scene in the final trailer, and that's where Yuffie tells Sonon about the plan to drop the plate on Sector 7. So that puts it around Chapter 12, Chapter 13-ish, somewhere in that region, because it's not happened yet. We just know it's going to happen. So the latest that can take place is there. But from a lot of things that have been said from the developers and in interviews and things like that, the story of Intermission is at the very least going to match up timeline-wise with the end of Final Fantasy VII Remake, if not go slightly beyond it. Because Nomura says, I think it was Nomura, it might have been someone else, but I'm pretty sure it was Nomura in one of those Famitsu interviews. He says that Remake Part 2 is going to carry on from where Final Fantasy VII Intergrade leaves off. Not Final Fantasy VII Remake, Final Fantasy VII Remake Intergrade. So something that's coming in this package is potentially going to extend the timeline a little bit, and the only place that realistically could be is in the DLC. Unless they decide to add a little sub-chapter at the end of Remake, which I can't see them doing. Like, I genuinely cannot see them doing that. If there is anything that's going to extend the timeline beyond that final battle with Sephiroth and everyone stood on like the edge of the highway, if there's anything that's going to extend the story past there, it's going to be in the DLC. So, if that's going to happen, and we know that Yuffie and Sonon are at the very least fighting Scarlet, potentially even fighting in Deep Ground by Chapter 13 at the latest, there's got to be a bit of a skip there. It's only going to be a day, in like the timeline of Final Fantasy VII, you know, in universe, it's only going to be like a day. But there's got to be something. There's something that doesn't match up there. And when we look at the track listings for the original soundtrack, you see after you know, you've got Vice and Nero, you've got all of that sort of business there, and some of those titles are very interesting. I'm potentially going to put a video out on it and speculate on that a little bit. But after those track listings, you've got a massive chunk of tracks, almost the same size as the Deep Ground section, that are completely hidden. So that tells me that we've either got a massive amount of like cutscenes and, you know, story going on after those events, or we're going to get a bit of a time skip and, you know, there's going to be a bit more gameplay. Either way, I do feel like there's got to be something at the end of the DLC that puts it past the end of Remake, because everything that's been said so far suggests it. And then the final one, and I really don't want. I wanted to avoid this one, but it's Genesis, and it's yes or no. Are we going to see Genesis? And I don't think we're going to see Genesis. I think we're going to see hints of Genesis. I think we're going to see potentially like a wake of Genesis. So, you know, like in the same way when you break out of, well, I was about to say when you break out of the prison cell, but no, in Remake, it's when you get back out of the drum and you get back up to the top and you can just see a trail of destruction that's been left behind by Sephiroth as he's took Jenova. We could potentially see something similar to that with Genesis. Not like he's going to go and break someone out of a tank and drag him through the building or anything daft like that, but something, you know, some sort of sign that he was there but now he isn't. I genuinely think we'll get something. I don't think they're going to put him on the table yet, though. I think they're going to save Genesis for Remake. We're already getting Vice, we're already getting Nero. There's already a potential chance we're going to get the rest of the Soviets, which that'd be good as well. I cannot see them adding Genesis on top of it. If anything, the story of Remake, the story of Intermission will play out. We'll get it all finished off, and then we'll get something similar to like the Dirge of Cerberus secret ending, where Genesis walks over, picks up Vice, flies off. We'll get something like that with Genesis. Like we'll see the cave that Genesis is kind of self-imprisoned himself in, and something will go on there. That's my guess, if anything. But personally, I think we'll just kind of see a sign of Genesis. Like we might see that cave, but it's empty, and that's it. And that'd be enough. And it builds so much hype and so much suspense for Genesis that already exists. They don't need to drop him into this DLC because they've already added a lot of characters. But if they were going to do it, this is the perfect opportunity to just go, oh yeah, that guy as well, and just hint to him. That's what I think we're going to get. I think we're going to get a hint to Genesis. It'll be a big hint as well. It won't be like a little subtle thing. It'll be massive. But that's my prediction. We could easily get him. All of these predictions could be wrong. You know, there's always a chance. That's why I've thrown the Sonon one in there as like a bonus number 8 prediction, because, you know, he's definitely going to die. Come on, that guy's done. He's done. But what do you think? What are your predictions for Final Fantasy VII Remake Intermission? And what do you think of my predictions? Do you think I'm miles off the mark? I mean, I don't know. I don't think I've predicted anything groundbreaking there. I've not gone into anything too major. I've just kind of tried to give my view on the flow of the Intermission DLC, how it's going to flow and what kind of things are going to happen. But yeah, that's my take on it. What about you? What's your take on it? Don't forget to drop a like on the video and subscribe for future content and leave your thoughts in the comments below. But more importantly than anything, have a great day. So not so dead.